welcome to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing Peter James's Picture You Dead. We saw this production at Theatre Royal Nottingham on the 14th of March 2025. Superintendent Roy Grace is back in the brand new Peter James stage adaptation and world premiere of the best-selling novel, with a total of 20 Sunday Times bestsellers to his name, and the television series Grace, now a huge hit on ITV. Picture You Dead cements Peter James's Grace series as the most successful modern-day crime stage franchise since Agatha Christie. So Richard, what's it all about?
Back home in Brighton, DSI Grace investigates a cold case that leads him to a secretive world of fine art. But beneath the respectable veneer lurks a dark underworld of deception and murder. When one unsuspecting couple unearth a potentially priceless masterpiece, they discover their dream find is about to turn into their worst nightmare. And only Grace can stop them from paying the ultimate price.
But first, our post-show opinion!
Talk about painting by numbers.
I wouldn't call this a true masterpiece.
So with all that said, let's
set the scene.
Hello and welcome back to this new series of Upstage Downstage. So what we've decided to do, myself and Richard, is just rejig how we do things here. So when we set the scene, we're going to start talking about describing the set, first and foremost, and then we're going to go into the costumes and how it looks from a visual point of view. And then when we go into Here for the Drama, that's when we'll actually talk about the nuts and bolts of the production. So your acting, your directing, and your writing, and the production as a whole. So with all that said, Richard, let's start at the very beginning.
A very good place to start.
It's a very good place to start. And if you would like to tell our listening audience, if you'd like to describe the set that we saw for the show.
As we walked into Theatre Royal in Nottingham, we were presented with three sets in one, really.
Yep.
However, all I would say with a caveat of is if you're sat either stage right or left, you might miss quite a bit of the set because it actually was wider than the proscenium arch.
Yes.
So you would have missed certain bits of the production because what you'd got was a front room on stage right with a central part of a grand country house in the centre part of the set, and then on the stage left you'd got an artist studio, really.
Mm-hmm.
So the living room at stage right, you got a very modern day living room with on the stage right of the stage you'd got a stage. You got some double patio doors that went out into what would have been the garden area, and also at the back of the set you got a cut through archway like they'd had the room renovated to take the wall away, with the view of a set of stairs leading up to upstairs, and then what was perceived as, which we couldn't really see, was maybe a front door and then off to the kitchen as well at the back. But as I said earlier, if you'd have viewed this from stage, if you'd have been on the left-hand side of the audience, you wouldn't have even seen the double doors because of the angles that were presented to us of those doors. So and things did happen around that area of the stage. Similarly, on the other side, you've got the artist studio with big windows showing really like a studio in a block of flats or a building or a factory building. And similarly, that would have shown that you wouldn't have seen that on the side we were sat. You couldn't actually see any of that unless you were sat right in the middle of the audience, really. And just to note that what actually happened in the artist studio side, shelving was actually pushed out whenever that scene was used to just create more of a enhance that scene, to create it being more of a doorway into it with shelves of paintings and things that just masked the middle portion of the set.
Yeah, because where we were sat, we only ever saw the artist sat down on a stool or a bench.
One part of the shelving. And
that was it. It was literally in the grand stage, the grand house in the middle of the stage.
Yeah, and there's actually 3 sections of shelving, and we can only see the edge of one of them. Yeah. So that shows you how sort of much we couldn't see, which was quite distracting, really, because you couldn't really get the perspective of what was happening.
Especially when you think about the actual living room.
Yes.
Which is like a typical lounge set out of, I don't know, Emmerdale Farm or something like that, where it's... a lot of it isn't really needed. And
it's quite dominant, really. There's more of the living room than there is the rest of the spaces, in a way.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there was an empty space for when they had the swirly chair, but still, it like the whole space of it felt slightly off.
Yeah, and I think maybe they could have explored some sort of pull-out part for the artist studio that masked the country house when it wasn't needed. I feel like the set was, they had to put 3 different scenes on one stage, and there was the payoff was actually we ended up with sort of cramming them on, really, to make them fit. Whereas if they'd have, because the other thing I didn't mention in the country house is the back wall was actually false, so where there was pictures on this back country wall hung with a modern day seat in there, the walls came away to reveal a hidden room full of more artwork.
Yes, so, and just to explain a little bit more, the country house had like oak wall panelled walls everywhere, so it was really dark. Just to differentiate that from the modern day one where I said about it being Emmerdale Farm. Well, not, I didn't mean like
no exactly
the water with the country house Emmerdale Farm thing. So.
Yeah, and I mean also what we'll say is it was raised off the floor, so that area is raised probably a foot off the floor, and the other area is raised the living room about 6 inches off the floor. And if you are doing a raise, there might be a chance where you could have actually had a swivel part of the set come in, one of the walls actually come in to bring another part in, whereas it did feel a little bit cramped and crammed for the space it was working in, really.
Yes, and just outside of that, there was a walkway where the detective inspector and superintendent or the sergeant, they walked up and down this like black and white checkered. I think it was like a corridor, but it doubled up for a lot of other things as well, like the studio's place for
like
Acorn Antiques.
TV studio, yeah.
Acorn, not Acorn, Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah, Deal or No Deal,
or something like that.
Yeah.
That's where it started off. Yeah, so...
Yeah, Antiques Roadshow, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, why I kept thinking of Acorn Antiques, you know, it's like... God,
the set didn't move that much.
No. Probably should have done.
It wasn't Crossroads.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But no, I think aesthetically they look good. I just think practically there was a little bit of an element of
too much on set.
Too much. Well, no, I wouldn't say too much, but maybe the perspective was a bit off. If they'd have shrunk the angle of the living room so that it was more a third of the stage rather than almost half.
They could have had the patio doors at the back.
Yes,
and we didn't necessarily because they didn't really use the staircase in North. It wasn't really important.
There's only the odd time when they went upstairs.
That could have just been to the side.
Yeah, really. Exactly. Yeah,
because you did need to see what was happening through the patio doors.
Yeah, exactly.
For later on in the show where someone creeps in.
Yeah, that's it. I think it felt more like a TV studio set than. You know what you'd see on Mrs. Brown's Boys or what you'd see on an old filmed series in TV where the camera would pan across 3 different areas.
Yeah, it looks like you get your couple of your TV cameras at the front there.
Yeah, it does.
Record.
Yeah, whereas we're designing set for theatre, so you've got to do a little bit. You've got to try and please. You know, you've got to try and get everybody seeing the production. And if you're doing a touring production, you've got to be mindful that you're touring it around a lot of different venues and does it work on sight lines and stuff like that. So you've just got to be a little bit mindful of that. But yeah, overall aesthetically it was good. I just think it could have had a few tweaks just to improve certain areas.
Yeah, and what about the costumes?
Costume-wise, I mean, it was modern day. You got your superintendent in and an inspector in very much what you'd expect. You know, they gave you the impression they were investigating in you know, jackets, long coats, almost formal wear, but very much what you'd expect as people out on the field.
So again, very stereotypical again.
Yeah, and same as the couple really. It's modern day, you know, couple going about the ways, you know, the midlife wear. It was nothing out of the ordinary.
Midlife
Not crisis.
wear. And then again, for all the other characters, like the skinhead who was slightly aggressive, to the guy who was buying and selling paintings, to the actual artist himself, everyone looked stereotypically the part. That's all I'd say. Yeah, it was okay. It was well done. And even like for me, when they were doing they were taking the painting in to get looked at Antiques Roadshow, it felt like even that was outside during the summer, because like the main characters who bought the painting from a car boot sale, they were in like summer costume, summer
definitely
clothes.
Yeah, and you know, like you said, the artist and the you know, the guy that owned the country house, and you know, everything felt of the character they were trying to depict. Really, when you stand back and look at them all, they all contrasted and stood out individually. Really.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're here for the drama. So let's talk about the acting, writing, and direction here. So which one shall we start off first?
What's going to spark us?
Yeah. Let's talk about the acting, and then we can go on to the directing, and then what they were directing about as in terms of the writing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, Harry and Freya did seem like a married couple. Ben Cutler and Fiona Wade, they bounced off each other well. Had the right elements
of fun and relationship, like they've been there for a long time. So they've clearly worked on that bonding. Yeah. And but just enough to make you think that they could potentially turn on each other.
Exactly.
And potentially you could tell to other things.
Yeah, there's like undertones of like, you know, doing things in their own way as well.
Yeah. They had elements of openness to perhaps,
I think they showed that
turn bad if
I think it showed that the relationship was lived in to the point where there might have been, you know, they're past the 7, or they're on the 7-year itch. It felt a bit like 7-year itch. It felt like there was elements of the 7-year itch, and they were like testing the waters, you know, a little. Or there was things that have griped them over the years, and all of a sudden they're starting to snap a little bit now.
Yeah, and we didn't get bogged down with all their like relationship stuff, so we could just follow the plot. I felt as well at the time that George Rainsford as Roy Grace and Gemma Stroyan as Bella Moy, the police detective and detective sergeant, they worked well together, and at times I felt they had this fun chemistry together. Yeah, exactly. You know, I don't know if they did Wish You Were Here together or Wish You Were Dead Again Tomorrow or whatever it was called, the previous one, but they worked really well together, and Gemma brought a lot of humour to it overall, which we'll get into later. I felt there wasn't much about them in terms of characterisation, like because it wasn't about them.
No, exactly.
Dave Hegarty, played by Peter Ash, he was great and very believable as the forger, the painter, the artist.
He seemed very relaxed in his performance, in the sense of very comfortable in taking his time with his words. He knew what he'd got to say. You could tell he knew what he got to do.
Yes.
And there was a lot of control there. You could see that.
And also giving a slight hint that, could I trust him? Could I not?
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a lot of like double bluffs going on. You never quite knew where you stood.
No.
And I think he played that character quite well. You didn't necessarily got the impression that he was a complete trustworthy person and really honest, there was something about him that felt slightly sneaky, but not over the top like some of the other characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of the other characters, Nicholas Maud playing Stuart Piper, he was quite the obvious baddie.
Yes,
playing the baddie there, and he played it well. But I think those kind of characters came across like you'd seen it all before.
Yeah.
So that stems from the writing rather than the performance. But the whole aesthetic of how he looked, how he performed, it touched upon him being gay, as well as how, just how he presented himself. You kind of knew that character instantly. And it's quite funny because some of these, it was not funny, but it's indicative of plays like these where it's a whodunit.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't go into too much detail about the characters. You get just enough detail and just enough resemblance. So they are slightly stereotypical. It's that whole situation when we're talking about Cluedo. You know enough about them, but not too much about them, because the actual plot is who killed this, who did this, who stole that, and so on and so forth.
And you also need enough motive and enough ideas that person could be the one. And he'd certainly give you, even if there were red herrings, he certainly gave you enough of an intrigue to wonder what he's caused or what he's going to do, or,
Yeah, and I think really throughout the show, you had good performances and strong, believable performances at that. And it was always a delight to have a bit of a break with the detective coming through and interacting.
Yeah, exactly.
And moving the plot along.
I mean, one thing I'd bring up is, one thing we noticed was Jodie Steele.
Yeah.
She was quite quiet in her vocalisations of some of the accents she was giving out, which were good, but I don't know if either it was a mic issue or she was relying on the mic to pick her up to deliver those lines, whereas actually she should have used the microphone to reinforce it, because there was times where her dialogue, you really couldn't hear it.
Yeah, and that was in Act 1, wasn't
And
it? Because I think she improved by the second act.
She did, yeah, but it didn't help with the story and the plot points that she was giving when you couldn't hear the dialogue. So that did have a bit of an effect. And this was on the Friday night, so it should have been fixed by, if it was mic issues, you'd have expected it to have been fixed by the Friday of the run of the production,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a little bit distracting when you're trying to take all the parts of the production in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she did actually give a good performance of the character that she played, Roberta Kilgore.
Yeah,
or
definitely.
is it Kilgore?
Kilgore, probably.
Kilgore.
Yeah.
She injected a bit of glamour and excitement to a really, I want to say dull world, but it was sort of like a stifled world,
Yeah, it was,
I would say, because she came through like out of her depth, like it was her character shouldn't really belong there.
Yeah,
in terms of being around Stuart Piper and the whole pain situation, like you knew there was something bad about her.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think she came into her own when she was befriending Freya Kipling, when she was pretending to be someone else.
Yeah.
To sort of like find out where the real painting or the forged, not the forged, but the real painting of the forged painting was. What do you reckon about the direction?
I think the pace was good. I mean, it was pretty slick as a production. So everybody. I don't think anybody missed their positioning. So I think it was blocked well. I think it was just distracting that the set was wider than the stage. So
some of the scenes were blocked.
So some of the scenes were blocked by physical blocks. But yeah.
I do seem to remember there was an issue where were they trying to grab a phone or something from on the lounge?
Yeah, there was a moment, wasn't there?
It just didn't seem believable. Like, You know when you go like the long way round something?
Yeah.
It just felt a bit.
It was almost
weird.
like, go straight to it rather than taking.
Was she trying to grab the phone, or was she? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think it was
in
on the
lounge.
table, wasn't it?
Was it on the
Was
table?
that when she didn't administer an EpiPen?
Yeah, it was something like that, wasn't it?
I know what you mean. It's the one where it was a bit like,
Yeah, I can't remember now, but it did feel like there was a scene that just like. Why are you waiting for that? Or why is that such a difficult thing to do? Just go and grab it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, I know. Was it something about the donuts? Because he was there.
Yes, it was the donuts.
His boyfriend was there.
Yeah, and he just stood and watched it happen.
And she was standing with the gun, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Or she was waving the gun about. This was Roberta was waving the gun about. And it's like, well, you could grab her from that, because she was like in distance. Just move it out of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Certain bits felt a little bit like overlooked.
Yeah, but also I've got to show you this donut because it's going to cause an allergic reaction. I've got to wave it in your face to the audience a little bit, And I think, I might be wrong, but I'm sure there was a couple of moments where we've got to show the audience some paper. Again, one of my bugbears, where we have to hold it out almost to the audience to show you something when actually we're going to look at this painting and we'll show the audience rather than just hold the painting up, and that's all we need. We don't need it pushed in our faces, we can see it.
I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well just say, if you'd like to turn to page 17 in your programme, you'll see the image that we're seeing now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that. I think sometimes you have to, yes, the audience need to have a reference point, but they don't need it like pointing and parading.
Yeah, so there's a few iffy bits, I should say, in some aspects of the direction, but that was only in that particular scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Where things came to a head and there was like guns being waved about and tensions were high and, the stakes were sort of high and, just to get out of a situation, you could easily get out of a situation. It just felt like, why have you done that? Come on. Definitely. Come on now. Oh, and also, the guy must... hold on, let me just put the names to these people. Harry Kipling was there. Surely, as a man, you can overthrow Roberta, the woman, because he was like... when your girlfriend's or your wife's dying, she needs the donut or she needs the EpiPen or whatever, and she's just like Fiona's there, Roberta's there with the gun.
There's a lack of panic or lack of...
but she's not even pointing
heroism.
It in any particular direction.
Yeah.
Like it's like you could believe that she didn't really know how to use that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no instinct to, imagine like Bruce Willis being in there.
Yeah.
Like get the job done. There was no, like get the job done. There was no urgency for Harry to do anything other than just be weak at a time where he's needed to be strengthful. But to serve the plot, he had to just not give a shit.
Yeah, he had to just
really?
be, but he was there.
Yeah.
He'd have been better off if he wasn't in the room. Yeah, exactly.
So that was just a little a bit that took you out of the moment of things developing and happening in real time where it's like, I don't really believe that would have happened. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
I mean, to make it happen, maybe direct it or perform it in a way that it could have been believable.
Yeah.
Like really point the gun in the faces, but it just felt...
Yeah, really make a point of it.
But it just felt like hither and thither and not really anything. So anything else you'd like to pick up upon, or shall we just
Not
move
on the directing, I don't think. I think we've covered it.
So what about the whole plot and the writing? Because for me, I felt this was very much a straightforward plot. I mean, it's based on a book, adapted from Peter James's book.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like you say, it's pretty straightforward, and there was no oh my god moments. There was no shock in the
Yeah.
So it certainly didn't. It didn't create any more intrigue, or it was what it was.
For me, it just felt like every time it hit a plot point or a red herring or anything, it was like tick, tick, tick.
Yeah.
There was no suspense for me. There was nothing I hadn't seen before, and I anticipated quite a lot of things. I think there was only one bit that I thought something was going to happen here, is when they'd been painting in the art studio and the inspector hung his coat up. Or no, not the inspector. Was it Stuart Piper hung his coat up?
Yeah.
And then he took it again, and they were talking about wet paint. So it had previously been painting, and I thought that's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, I think a lot of people enjoyed this. I think the success from the other one, Wish You Were Here or Wish You Weren't Here, whatever that was called, they seem to have enjoyed it. And because people like a whodunit and they like the reveal and to see if they got it right or not, for me it was very formulaic.
I think for me there was times when there was comedic moments, or I couldn't tell if they were going down the route of a serious whodunit or a Midsummer Murders cozy murder production.
Yeah.
I think what
like
I'm getting at, it was like it touched on being a thriller, but then it wasn't. It touched on being like having like moments of death, or moments of pressure, like from when like Roberta's character, you got moments where you thought that it's going to turn and it's going to twist and it's this, that and the other, but there was times it felt a little bit unsure of where it sat within all these productions, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
I wonder if the book would have drawn you in more to the twists, and instead of it being performed and you seeing it, I think if you're reading it, it'd probably add a bit more excitement as to so what's going on now, or what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I just think when by viewing it, it just seemed very okay.
There was some parts where the intensity wasn't there. I thought it's like, and yes, you've got to make something that a lot of people are going to watch, but you've still got to make it like worth watching.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the Tech Is This?
I mean, technically, it was general cover. There was a few lighting effects, but nothing major. A few of the sound effects were questionable. I don't know if the gunshots were great. They didn't add any intensity. It certainly wasn't Blood Brothers level. No. You know what I mean? It just
yeah.
And I think sound can enhance something like this if things are done right. But I mean, lighting wise, it was cleverly done where they zoned each area, and it gave you the views that you needed to. Like for me, a few times when the house was in darkness, that worked because there was blue light behind it, and you could tell that it was night time, and the states
and with the chandeliers in the posh house, the estate house, wasn't it?
Yeah, but overall, I mean, it was it was that's what it was.
Did they have smoke coming from the room when it was on fire?
They did. Yeah.
Can't think what else they had, to be honest.
There wasn't much more. It's generally general cover and zoned lighting, really.
But overall, it was all right. Technically, it was okay, and like we say, it had lighting under the stage just to lift it and elevate it off the actual main stage.
There was only one technical hitch, like light, not necessarily lighting or sound, but they had a swivel chair on stage.
Oh yes,
and in the living area where there's a dead body on it eventually.
Oh, that was another.
But when they first placed it, I think it was a little bit more oiled than it should do, because it kept swinging round more than it should have done. So every time they placed it, it kept moving. The chair kept swiveling round.
Yeah, and I think that added to a bit of unbelievable.
Yeah, we've got to go and stand by the chair to hold it,
to
almost.
make sure that you don't see a dead body or something.
Yeah.
It's...
Where the body should have just been slumped, it had to have its foot there, because it was a real person, but it had to have its foot there just to stop it swiveling round anymore. And I think they could have tightened that up or just fixed it. Or
and
something.
had the patio door been at the back, and a swivel chair been at the back, then it probably wouldn't have been as bad. But because it was right at the, downstage,
exactly.
It's like, oh, everybody can see this.
Yeah, exactly.
Surely you can see the dead body in the chair.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, it's a dead body. Oh dear. And now it's time for
Rewind, Rewatch.
I'm really harsh at the moment. I've seen
it
once.
very harsh.
Very, very harsh. I've seen it once and I wouldn't see it again.
To be honest, I'm feeling you there. I felt this is very a bit like The Verdict. I felt like it didn't pick up until the second act when I was more into it. And the very first act, I felt like, oh, this is just come along now, come along. When's the interval? When's it going to end? I don't think I would rewatch this.
No,
but I know that sounds harsh, like you just said, but I think I would watch another one of his.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because if we compare this to the Ribus one, Ian Rankin's one, that was blooming awful.
It was, yeah.
But there's something about this.
Yeah,
It still had the plot points. It still had the characters servicing the script and the plot. It was still intriguing and it was still enjoyable, but it just wasn't necessarily one that you took anything away from.
And then also, what I'd say to add to that is, it's one that once you've seen it and know what happens, you can't watch it again to pick out all the bits that you might have missed, or because some can be really clever where you go, actually, I need to watch that again because I'm sure I missed the whole arc of part of it or something. That whereas this just didn't. It just felt almost one note in a way,
Yeah, I suppose because if you were reading a book, you can. Oh, I forgot what that happens because you're reading it. But if you see something, especially when it's a murder mystery, it's like that door's going to be used. They're going to do this, they're going to do that, and that. So it sort of spoils it. I mean, there are certain shows where you know what's going to happen, but they're so enjoyable that you just want to see people perform and go through the motions.
Exactly.
But do it their way. But because this isn't about character, it's not about performances, it's not about the set or anything, how things happen. It's about who did it.
Exactly.
Once you know who did it,
you're done. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at least like with Cluedo, you could see it again because of how they work around in the whole farce and the comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this doesn't have that.
No.
You've only got like a one-hit once.
Because it's in the middle ground, it's like, well, I don't need to see it again.
Exactly. So, that's that.
Moving on to our final segment, as we say,
Call this a show?
I think it was a good adaptation from a book. However, I think they could have gone further to conceal or hide a few things or intertwine them to make them give it a little bit more intrigue and push it to be more of a thriller than a middle-of-the-road production, quite honestly.
Yeah, for me, I think the overall production was good. It was entertaining. It was, I think it would interest and intrigue a lot of people out there who just want to see like a whodunit on the stage. But as previously said, it's not got a rewatch value for me. But saying that, it was generally okay. It was a good show. I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't call it a piece of theatre because it was just a stage version of a book, just going through the motions. So it wasn't specifically written with the theatre in mind. And what I mean by that is it was just an easy set.
Yeah.
They never really used the space, or it wasn't thought of in a stage way of how could we make this production.
It's quite cramped, wasn't it?
Yeah. When you say it's like, is it a good show or a good production, that has got to be in itself, bring something or add something to it, so you could see a show and think that was a good show, how that was directed, how they used the stage and everything, whereas this was it just was what it was. Did it break the theatre world? No. It was just a show. It was So that's my summary. I suppose I ended on a bit of a negative there for it, but it is what it is. It's a whodunit on stage. Don't expect anything more. Scores then, please, Richard, for Peter James's Picture You Dead. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a Picasso of a production, and 1 being a production unworthy to be hung. What's it going to be?
I'm going to give it a 6. Aesthetically, it was, good and everything was there. However, yeah, it just gives a 6 from me.
And I'm going to give it a 5.5. So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck, tumbleweed, an audible shrug of the shoulders, a slow clap, a pleasant applause, or a standing ovation. What will it be?
I'll give this a pleasant applause.
And I'm going to give it a pleasant applause as well. So there we are. That's our discussion of Peter James's Picture You Dead. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
and opinions
on many theatrical delights in future episodes.
If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of
Upstage Downstage.
Superintendent Roy Grace is back in a brand new James stage. No. Picture You Dead, the 7th and brand new thrilling stage adaptation. I'll get rid of that. Picture You Dead cements James. Why do I keep putting James first? Picture You Dead. Picture You Dead cements Peter James's Grace series as the most successful modern day crime stage franchise since Agatha Christie. Do that bit again.
Back home in Brighton, DSI Grace investigates a cold case that leads him to the secretive world of fine art. But beneath the respectable veneer lurks a dark underworld of deception and murder. I have to do
Murder! There's been a murder!
Ran out of edit, haven't you? Back home in Brighton, DSI Grace investigates a cold case that leads him to the secretive world of fine art. But beneath the respectable veneer lurks a dark underworld. Hold on. I'm running out of breath, aren't I? I'm not taking a long enough pause.
Well, you're not breathing, are you, really?
No. Back home in Brighton, and so
Yes.
Derbyshire. Back home in Brighton. When one unsuspecting couple unearth a potentially When one
you need to enunciate, you've got to do your beat.
I know, yeah, exactly. Pig. When one unsuspecting couple unearth a potentially priceless. When one unsuspecting couple unearth a potentially priceless masterpiece, they discover that their dream is their dream find.
Go from there.
Well, as we walked into the as we walked into Royal
Theatre Royal.
There we go.
Peter James, Picture You Dead. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a Picasso. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a Picasso. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a Picasso. I want to say pistachio. So it's okay if you go back on
Yeah,
it.
but you
if
don't
you
bother.
be
Just
forward
don't bother.
it,
Just
then
don't bother.
no.